Peace. Today I want to talk about something that I get asked a lot, specifically from the women in my family, from the women that are most immediately surrounding me. Obviously throughout the years they've noticed the changes coming into a relationship that provided for me a new framework, coming into myself, coming into my true self, and portraying that, and portraying that, meaning adding that into a living culture that is seen and is heard in many different places, right? And obviously I am not the only one that has done this. There's women around the world that have come to a sort of being of self, a higher level, and so they're doing that, and they're living that out. And this question is really about the counterpart to the culture and the art of head wrapping, and that is dressing and clothing, right? That would be the counterpart to this head wrapping business, right? And some of the questions that I get is like, what kind of dressing style do you incorporate with your practice of head wrapping? And I'm going to go over 5 major points that will outline how a lot of women, not only myself, I'm coming from one perspective, but these perspectives are all in balance with each other, and you'll see how that happens as I continue to talk throughout this video. Now, I would say that the first major contention is it's your philosophical foundation. Right? What is your philosophical foundation? Usually we find that women that have attained a certain level of modest dressing belong to a religion. For those people that do not belong to a philosophical foundation that is related to a religion, then the question would be that everyone has to ask themselves is, what guides your actions and your moral backbone? So most of us do have some sort of foundation that dictates our actions, that dictates our growth in self, in spirituality, right? Now, with religion specifically, religions deal with the concept of a mysterious God who provides them or us the rules and regulations that we need so that we can live spiritually in accordance to whatever that God is dictating to us via the sacred text that we deal with, whatever that is, right? And so usually, right, this mysterious God, we can't see him, right? We're waiting for him to come and appear. We're waiting for his messenger, right? Different things like that. Before religion becomes an organized way of having rules and regulations that dictate our self-development, right, spiritually, our people were dealing with non-mysterious forces. We knew that we had to look at ourselves first before we were asking questions to somebody that was supposedly up in whatever heavens. Even when our religious center of worship has an internal process where we look into ourselves to then reflect back, that process is still functioning around the paradigm that somehow we are imperfect beings, therefore we must continue to submit to whoever this mysterious God is, so that we can then just continue to try to be as perfect as he is. And this is why then you get people, making excuses about that this is why I did this, or this is why I did that. We have it kind of takes away from self-accountability, and this is and it takes away that driving force. For some people it works, because for some people now you have this force that you want to be like something, but you already are, and that is what you're trying to draw out from within, as my educator Sonia Zala always says. Also, we have to understand that the reason why religion is so organized and is such an entity is because throughout history, and there's proof of this, what the Europeans learned from the original man in what is considered today as third world countries, they literally had to learn it as rules and regulations, not as a way of life. Later on, they would have to apply that into their way of life. But because of the inability to have this kind of like fluidity in living in this particular way and having this organic, holistic mind framed, then it kind of becomes like, okay, dude, we gotta go through this. We gotta go through this every time. We gotta set reminders for ourselves. See, the original people didn't need any reminders. We just simply lived with a code of ethics that was based on love, that was based on a giving, on being unconditional. And so this is key in understanding how religion ends up becoming this institution that people need to go to in order to find meaning up with themselves and to find meaning about the world. Whereas the original people, they just immersed themselves into society. They went into meditation. They got to know themselves by getting to know the earth, by getting to know creation. And this is key in understanding the original people and the differences between a living spirituality, a living taking accountability and understanding your supremacy. You are in perfection, as Sunya Salat always says, and that really there is nothing that is controlling that your reality. And once you start to understand that, then you take accountability for yourself. And so the concept of heaven and hell is something that our people, our ancestors dealt with as matter of factly, meaning that heaven and hell were these counterparts that played each other in our lives. One of the letters in the supreme alphabet that I deal with is the 12th letter, which is knowledge, wisdom, which borns understanding, right? 1 + 2 = 3, which gives you an understanding. That is, it's L, which is love, hella, right? When we're talking about hell, we're really talking about work. Right? In order to get through something rough, in order to get through roughness or something that is extremely strenuous for us, then we got to put in that work. And this is where, the concept of love comes in, right? We got people from Che Guevara to the Dhammapada speaking that hate cannot dispel hate. Only love can dispel hate, right? So if you apply that, what is that telling you? If you apply this concept of love into the hell, then you come out right. It's about coming out upright. And this is how our ancestors dealt with the concept of having a moral and a philosophical foundation. It was not based on a mysterious being. It was based on focusing on the inner self and showing that outwardly, showing our godliness, right? God comes from the etymological root, right, which means mind, right, which is man. So when I say the godliness, women have an aspect of being godly too, although her predominant nature is being exactly like nature, is being like earth. So with that said, right, everything came from the self and it expanded outwardly. We were not looking towards answers into a mysterious being that we never saw, that never existed, right? We're looking for it in ourselves. Even the sacred texts themselves, sometimes they tell on itself. Sometimes some religions really do tell on themselves, because when you look through the text correctly, you will find that those same exact texts are saying, right, that man is made of God. So what is that telling you? And I forget what Psalms it is, but in the Bible there is a direct quotation which says that man is God, and so that he is the creator, right? And the mind is like this collective consciousness. So with that said, when you're looking at a woman who is already dressed in what we call refinement, right, then you're looking at someone who has already undergone a certain level of study into this modesty, into incorporating that into the culture. When another thing that our ancestors dealt with was not separating mathematics, the scientific reasoning from this philosophical outlook, right? Because this is why a lot of people in this westernized societies are like, why is there, we need great questions. Who are the ones that produce the great questions? These are the philosophers. But you see, there's a division there, because mathematics and science and the sciences are like these totally separate worlds from the philosophy, really, right? You major in these different brackets, but you never find the relations between any of these disciplines. And that's something that was not the case in ancient societies, right? And so with this, once you are armed with the mathematics, which is really explains the law and order of the universe, how we create things, it literally expresses, each number expresses how things get created, right? Once you're armed with that, and you're armed with experimental, the experimental side, which is the scientific reasoning, where you get to test things and see the validity of things and grow profoundly in the mathematics, then what are all these things teaching us? Science and mathematics are really teaching us more about ourselves. Our philosophical and moral foundation grows more and gets more grounded, I would say, with these disciplines, right? And so there is really no separation. And so with modest dressing for the women, one of the things that is extremely obvious is this idea that the earth, right, is covered in 3/4 water. Now, literally, the human body is just like that. Our bodies are made of 75% water. Our circulatory system is one of the largest systems in our bodies. And when we take this metaphor, right, and then we look at the nature of woman, there's tons of ancient texts which correlate the original woman with the earth. And so, as a start, this 3/4 concept is very important in seeing that. And so that is my philosophical foundation. I have a piece called The Science of 3/4. It's on my blog, and under the video I will post a link to that, because it gives you more perspective on what I'm talking about right now, but I don't want to go too in depth. But my main contention with this is a key component in the philosophical foundation of at least for me, for my own, what grounds me, what I've come to understand. And I know there's tons of people out in the world like that. And again, I am not speaking bad against religion. Religion is very important for those who need it. A lot of us need structure. A lot of us need to come into the self by feeling like we need somebody up there, right? So it's beautiful, and this is how things balance each other out. Eventually, everybody has a process to go through. Now, the second point is deconstruction popular notions of fashion, right? We live in a society where we're being constantly bombarded with what to wear. And when you look at the fashion industry, right, it's an industry that is like many other ones. It is dominated by males that are dictating how women should dress. And I find this very interesting. Not to say that men do not know. A true man, right? A true man that understands the woman, not only physically but conceptually. I've seen that before, right? But what's happening with this is that these men are not in tune with what womanhood is really about. They're not in tune with the essence of who the woman is and her body. And so this is why we're getting fed tons of images of how we should dress. And obviously, right, for women of color, for black, brown, and yellow women, a lot of these fashions don't make any sense. Even for some white women themselves, they find themselves in disaccord with what white society is telling us how we should look and how we should dress, right? Now, obviously, there is a big difference between being obese when it becomes a health problem than just really having curves, because it's not only a part of your genealogy, right? It is welcomed and it is accepted in the culture that you come from. right? And so you have all these things playing out. The majority, of the fashion industry is one where it doesn't cater to different body types. And so we have to deconstruct these notions and see why and how does modesty play a role in that. And I think that the more we deconstruct that, the more we actually end up embracing a more modest lifestyle, because we don't want to be dressing in that sort of way. We're having other people define us. We're dressing, and it's funny, I used to I never really wore too many provocative clothes, but I always loved showing cleavage, right? But it's funny because I would walk outside and I would be showing the cleavage, but I always felt like there was something off. Like I always felt uncomfortable, so I would slouch a little bit, right? And I find this is common with a lot of women. They're to them, yeah, they feel empowered by dressing a certain way, but what they don't understand is that you're actually feeling empowered while you're being disempowered. A woman's strength is in how much she hides, not how much she shows. It is not liberating to do that. In mathematics, the mathematics that I deal with, the number 4 is cultural freedom. We're taught in this culture, in this westernized culture, right? We are taught that we can do whatever we want. Now, is that really freedom? Is freedom truly doing whatever you want? I feel like a freedom, right? True freedom is a freedom that is in accord to righteousness, because this is what really sets you free. Now, and that's another that is really what this second contention is about, right? What is it that guides your actions? A lot of people, whether we want to recognize it or not, our decisions, our ways of dressing, our styles are all dependent upon the society that feeds us, right? How to go about doing that, how to go about living our culture. It is inevitable. One of the greatest things that I love about talking to my stepdaughter, she's a very fiery teenager, extremely smart, and she challenges me, because right now she's in the stage where she wants to express herself and she wants to be unique. And so one of the things that she tells me is that, obviously, right, through dressing styles, we portrayed who we are. But then I challenge her back and I'm like, well, how are you truly expressing yourself if you're wearing a Forever 21 shirt that thousands of other girls around the nation are wearing? We need to examine the choices that we're making, and we need to examine who is feeding us the rationales for these choices that we are. And we have to see how, as righteous women who embrace a modest lifestyle, we're being affected by this. But this is a second point that, relates as to why I dressed, right? Why is my modesty dressing style and the culture of hair wrapping, why I'm embracing this, right? So that's really the second contention. So the third contention is you have to know your social history in order to understand where you're going with this. If you're going to have a unique identity in dressing modestly, right? Because you have to have a unique identity. Not every woman wears modestly or adapts a more protective dressing style. I'm calling it protective. Just out of nowhere, right? Some things are feeding you. And, something that relates to the prior contention, which is fashion, right? Right now, we're living in times where either they're taking cultural clothing styles, traditional clothing styles from Black and brown people, and they're putting it out there. These white designers are popping them out. Obviously, that first thing relates to cultural appropriation, right? They're literally taking Native Americans, African fashion, and taking it and making profit off of it. Unfortunately, our Chinese brothers and sisters, the government, right? Because I don't like to lump people. It's more about the Chinese government. They really have adopted a westernized mentality, and that mentality has been destroying Chinese traditional society for many years. And one of the things that they're doing right now is a perfect example is that they're actually making fake African wax fabrics, and that is really affecting the African economy for the particular countries that do sell these fabrics that are becoming more popular here in the U.S. as well. But there are also cultural movements happening right now where they're, what the aim is to preserve not only the customs and traditions, but also the clothing styles and dressing forms of these original groups of people that can be traced back to an ancient society. But so these do exist. I was recently reading an article on these new rising Native American fashion designers. So we are getting we are getting a new generation of conscious individuals that are original, whether African, whether Native American, right, that are promoting their ways and bringing it to the forefront without whitewashing it. Now we would have to ask ourselves, right, this brings to me another question, which is, how are they presenting their culture through the clothing styles, and what is their mentality like? We have to look into that as well, because are they just, are they just like every other fashion designer promoting, these ideas and these views, these dominant views? Do they have a Eurocentric mentality? And so we must look into that. So we have to know what our social history is, right? For example, I come from a Dominican background, right? So-called Dominican Republic. So that I have to get in tune with the different original people that make the identity of where I come from, and that is African, and it's Native, and it's Moorish, right? So by researching my history, I can then adapt a better way of something that is more in tune culturally with me. Not meaning that I shouldn't be wearing any tunics from India, right? Or Mexican tunics, because I love those as well, right? And then it becomes a question of who can do it and who cannot, kind of like the nigga word, right? Who can and who cannot say it. And in order for you to determine that, you really need to know who the true original people are. You cannot just judge people just because they look brown or they look black, right? Or they're a yellow seed that has African features, right? All these different things play a role. So you gotta really, really know who is black. And that is what really gives the authority for those people to really borrow from each other, because that's always been in the tradition of all original people. And also, in continuing, you not only read your history, but also make sure that you do meet with the women in your community, that you do talk to them, that you do find allies that are deconstructing their Eurocentric mind frames and that are embracing their true cultural forms. Is literally kind of like retracing yourself back from a Ladino, which I spoke about in a previous video. And so, how do you start to deconstruct these things? Because, it's very true what my educator Sunya Zala says. He's basically saying that original people today, the reason why we're still here is because we are at different levels of assimilation. And we really are. We don't act how we acted in ancient times or things like that. So how do we start reclaiming that, but reclaiming that in such a way where it's right and exact, where it is in tune with our universal nature, not just, going all buck wild, going on some spiritualistic, and getting crazy. There are people that do go a little, on the funny side. But yeah, so make sure that in this process of reclaiming and of getting to a more true, to getting through your true self as a woman by exploring your history, and therefore allowing that to inform how you will dress, that you do this, that you meet with the women, and of course you read your history, and all these things, studying, combining it with the people that are in your community that are doing the same things you are, that are deconstructing their minds. Build with them, get with them as women, and find what your true self through clothing is. And so with this, we have to know our social history so that we know where where we stand. Now, the fourth and final contention is knowing your body type. Body type is extremely important because what looks good on one woman might not necessarily look good on another, right? Now, once you've had all these things, once you are set on what your philosophical foundations, what is it that grounds you? What are your moral actions? What is the moral backbone that dictates your actions, right? As a woman, how do you view your growth and spirituality? The second one, right, which is deconstructing what society is feeding you as feminism, as liberation, and really readapting that and reclaiming that, right? And then you come to the third contention, and it's really getting to know who you are, where you're coming from, how different women dressed in past, from in history that relates to you, right? Like from my own history, I know that there was in this one of the Surdama books, I think it's Golden Age of the Moor, he actually talks about a Moorish fashion designer. How amazing is that, right? And he was pivotal in making these dresses that were being worn by the women in Europe. So, right, this is a part of my history, right? Is beyond my African component, is just beyond just the dashiki. It gets more deeper than that. And so, come to find out, the long skirts is big throughout all original cultures for modesty. So anyways, right, and now we get to this final contention, which is body type is extremely important, right? Now that you've kind of outlined what kind of clothing you would like to wear, what sets you, what is your style really, then you have to look at your body type. Like, for example, for me, I cannot wear too loose things. So I cannot wear something loose at the top and then something loose at the bottom, right? It's either one or the other. If I wear something loose at my top, then most likely I will wear more of a fitted skirt or jeans. I do not see jeans, some women might disagree with me, but I do not see jeans as something that is not modest. I do see it as modest. So in adapting a modest style based on your body type, right, and your taste, right? Taste is very important too. What do you like in clothing? What are some of the colors that you tend to be more that you gravitate more towards? What kind of styles are you into? And you have to refer back obviously to the third contention, which is, right, the social history and the women that you have spoken to in the past, and how this allow that to inform, right? Because if you want to have more of a cultural look, you can also, what you can do is that's really useful is you don't have to just strictly dress in a traditional form of clothing, but you can actually combine it. You can do a mix of modern clothing today with a kind of like a traditional twist on it. So, you might definitely have some jeans on, but you might have kind of like a, let's say a Mexican tunic that, has what you want to express on it. So, there is that kind of that two-way form in it, but definitely body type is important, along with what kind of things you like as a woman based on all these different contentions. If you really go through that process, right, you get down and gritty, the body type is really more now of the actual work. How do I start to choose my clothing? How do I what kind of things I like more? I prefer, my own personal style is really kind of like a mix between modern clothing with a traditional twist on it, right? So if I wear a traditional skirt, I might have something modern on. I might have a bag that is not necessarily cultural, but more of, European, and then mixing that in, right? And it's part of our deconstructive process. There are some women that are just strictly, I'm wearing everything from it. I mean, the best example that I could think of, he's so admirable, is Gandhi. Gandhi actually stopped wearing any form of clothing. You would always see him, even if you watch the movie, you will see him. He made his own fabric. He made his I forget what the name of that machine is called, but basically Gandhi was making his own clothes, and there are people out there that do that, and you can get to that level, right? Unfortunately, we're in a very fast-paced Eurocentric society, but it is possible. We can do that as part of our liberation, and I think that's one of the deepest levels that we can get to, is what Gandhi was doing. He was literally making his own clothing to wear. He didn't wear anything that was, you could buy or that could be consumed by somebody else. So this is really that last component, is choosing your style, really forming it be aware of your body type, be conscious of it, so that it informs how you will start to view yourself and to dress yourself and to go out there into the world that doesn't promote women being covered up, and that really doesn't understand, the power that comes from the covering in women, specifically Black, brown, and yellow women, and what this means for them, and how you can actually accentuate your beauty through layering, through elongating, because there's other different parts of it. I mean, I love this movie, Memoirs of a Geisha, because it's a perspective on yellow women and their culture, their ancient culture. And with the geishas, they had a clothing style as well, and it was really about, they actually covered up a lot, right? They wore these elaborate silk kimonos, beautiful, expensive kimonos, right? And the beauty not only came from the kimono, but the beauty also came with the little bit of skin they would show. They would show like maybe parts of the wrist and that, and this specifically this part, and they had to move you a certain way, and that was particularly very erotic for the Japanese men of that time, and so it was all about in her grace and how she moved. And because she was considered a moving work of art, it was in how the man perceived her to be. So, and obviously how the hair was made, right? They have their own version of head covering as well, but I love that example because it gives you a deeper perspective on and a worldly perspective on other Black women around the world doing this, even if the world doesn't consider them Black, but that's another story. But this is, these are the main contentions. I know that I said 5, totally mistake. It was really 4. I mean, we can keep adding to the list though. Every woman's process is different. I'm giving my own personal process in how I came to being a so-called modest woman, how I came into myself as an original woman, and how that informs how I'm living my culture. And obviously my culture says a lot about me by my dress codes, and obviously by my cultural practice and artistic presentation of my crowns. So there we go. I hope that this was helpful to you, and with that I say peace.